Gloria Allred, attorney for Beverly Jones, one of Roy Moore's accusers. Gloria, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Beverly Young Nelson.
Beverly Young Nelson, correct. Thank you. Sorry for that. I want to ask you in particular what you make of what you just heard.
Well, I'm not surprised that they held a press conference today. Let me just say, initially, Rena, there was a suggestion by a defender of Roy Moore that the restaurant that Beverly Young Nelson alleged that she had been working at the time never existed. Then, of course, public records revealed from the library that that restaurant, in fact, was in existence at the time that she alleged that she was working there, and we never heard anything more about it after we challenged that. In addition, Roy Moore sent a letter to Sean Hannity, and in that letter, he stated, quote, Beverly Nelson was a party in a divorce action before me in Etowah County Circuit Court in 1999. No motion was made for me to recuse, and then he goes on from there. Well, evidence has now been presented by Beverly's Alabama divorce attorney who represented her at that time that, in fact, she never appeared before Judge Moore. In fact, he said he didn't think she even knew that Judge Moore was assigned to her case. The reason that she did not appear before him was that there was no hearing because the parties reconciled,
so that wasn't
and
true.
Therefore the case was dismissed. And in Alabama, there was no need to appear before a judge if, in fact, it was dismissed. So after that evidence was presented by her attorney at the time, in fact, we never heard any more about that. Now we're hearing new allegations put out there.
Just now, moments ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, these statements are being made in an attempt to discredit.
It's very obvious.
Alabama women who allege that they are victims.
It's very obvious that their tactic obviously is to poke holes at your defense and the things that you put out there. One of them in particular is this yearbook that back in 1977 that alleges that Roy Moore had signed. They've come forward saying it's not true, and they've poked holes at that. You have asked for an investigation, the Senate Judiciary Committee, our Ethics Committee, to look into that. You have said you are willing to even turn over this handbook. Where are you on that? Have you heard anything from the Senate?
We have sent a letter to the United States Senate Select Committee on Ethics, Rena. In addition, we sent a letter to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee asking them to hold a hearing as soon as possible within 2 weeks. That's about another week to go, a little less than that. At which time Beverly volunteers to take the oath to testify to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. And she will testify about the yearbook and all her other allegations. We also asked the committees to subpoena Roy Moore and ask him to testify under oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help him God. Right now, we have not heard from the committees. You are correct that we have said that we will happily turn over the yearbook to the committee should they hold a hearing and have those two witnesses testify, and then they can have it examined by an independent examiner. Right now, the silence is deafening from the Hill. We haven't heard from them. In the event that we don't hear from them by a day next week, we will then announce what our plan B is.
Would you be willing to turn it over to some independent investigator to analyze the handwriting, because this has become such a huge media issue?
Well, it's a huge issue because Roy Moore is making it an issue. Having said that, we think that we're very reasonable when we say we'll turn it over to an independent examiner of one of the committees. But today one of his representatives mentioned the dumpsters. Well, all I can say is, now that we have completely destroyed those first 2 points I suggested in the Roy Moore letter and also in the fact about whether the restaurant existed, now he's bringing up issues that are trying to discredit, you know, women, victims, people who allege they are victims of Roy Moore. These are Alabama women. And we're not talking about people from another state. We're talking about women of Alabama. And I just want to say, in reference to the dumpster, is Roy Moore going to continue to hide behind the dumpster, so to speak, and you know, continue to have garbage from the dumpster, in a sense, distributed to the press? I think it's time for him to come out and say, is he going to testify under oath or not? Or is he going to try to distract from that issue?
One of the tactics that they're also using is coming forward to the Alabama public and saying, look at the media. They think you're dumb and you're not capable of separating fact from fiction. Obviously, it doesn't appear at this moment that he's going to come forward and testify. We didn't see him today. We saw his attorneys representing him. Why do you think at this very moment, what could change the dialogue when it comes to this election and to what people can separate from fact and fiction that you believe representing, Beverly Young Nelson, that would make a difference, a turning point in this entire discussion?
Well, I think polls show that, at least as to Alabama women, many of the Alabama women are taking seriously the allegations of their neighbors, of their co-workers.
So you don't think this defense is working for them, that the strategy that they're using?
Well, I'm saying I think there's serious consideration being taken. It is up to Alabama voters, and they will decide whether or not Roy Moore, who was twice removed from the Alabama Supreme Court for ethical issues, for failing to follow certain court orders, whether or not, he is someone of whom they can be proud, and whether they believe his denials of the allegations of all of these Alabama women who have come forward. I think, in the court of public opinion, they get to make that choice. But of course, if, as and when it turns out that he is elected, then, of course, the Senate Select Committee on Ethics is going to need to hold a hearing. And then, of course, Beverly is happy to come. Even then, she will bring all of her witnesses, I can assure you of that, of which there are a number. And we'll look forward to that. And then Alabama voters can decide if they made that right choice, if, in fact, they elect him. But that may not happen. We're going to have to wait and see.
Are you surprised that President Trump hasn't come forward in these allegations and weighed in on this specifically?
No, I'm not surprised at all.
I'm just hearing from our producers in our control room. Tell me one more time, Rashid. President Trump just weighed in and said that you got to listen to him also. I want to ask you about this. You represent one of Donald Trump's accusers. Do you think that President Trump will see a day in court when it comes to these sexual assault allegations?
Well, President Trump, through his attorneys, has filed a motion to dismiss our lawsuit on behalf of Summer Zervos, a former candidate on The Apprentice, in which she alleges that he defamed her by calling her a liar. And then there are other statements that he made in addition to that. And that's when she came forward in the campaign after the Access Hollywood tapes were published. And he made the motion to dismiss. We filed our opposition. They have now filed their reply. And then on December 5th, there will be oral argument in New York City, in Manhattan Supreme Court, on the motions. And then it will be for the court to decide whether we are permitted to move forward or not permitted to move forward. We have also filed a subpoena on the campaign, and in the event, asking them to preserve the documents that we sought, and then also to produce them. And if, as and when we are permitted to move forward, the campaign has agreed within 30 days to produce those documents.
Well, you've represented so many of the accusers. Every day there is someone new that we are forced to report on that comes forward. What can change to get this to stop?
I think what can change is when we think about our daughters and the respect that they are entitled to enjoy in their workplaces, in their homes, in their schools, in each and every aspect of their life, in the sports world, in the business world, in the entertainment community, anywhere they are and everywhere they are. If we care about protecting our daughters, then we have to stand up and say victims matter, and having a safe workplace free from the hostility of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and rape matters. And we're going to stand up, let their voices be heard, and afford them the rights that they are entitled to enjoy.
Gloria Allred, thank you very much for joining us on
Thank you, Rena.